Hello and welcome to Manny Beal, and welcome to part. Oh my God, how many is it? Part 4, I think. Is it part 5? No, I think it's part 4. Excuse me. I'm not counting. I'm not good at counting. Accounting. Um, just to reiterate my thoughts on science, right? There's no need to make science this big thing, right? It's all my. It's like whenever you hand an explanation to an academic, they're going to fucking mindfuck themselves and you into some description that is almost incomprehensible, right? It isn't that difficult. It isn't that difficult, right? I was talking about beavers and the Eiffel Tower and so on, right? In the last part. And the idea of science and scientific abstractions and creating formulas and so on, it's not very difficult, really, right? So let me give you an example. There's on the picture here, you should be able to see a beaver, or an illustration of a beaver, right? And the earth. And let's say that I'm grabbing the beaver and I'm walking up in the Eiffel Tower and sort of, creating distance between me, taking the beaver and creating distance between the beaver and earth, right? Now, when you do that, there is some observations that if I let go of the beaver, it has a tendency to want to get back to earth, right? To put it that way, right? And if I was to jump from the Eiffel Tower, I would possibly sort of have a tendency to go back to earth, right? If you get my drift, right? So there is something going on here, and the realization by, mainly maybe by Newton, was that it doesn't matter if it's an apple or a beaver or a planet, right? It's the same thing going on. There's something that is common to all of these, right? That's an abstraction. That's not something you derive from. It's not like your observations are telling you, we are made of the same thing over here, right? That's a mental abstraction. But it was based on observation. Beaver thrown from the Eiffel Tower falls to earth. Tractor thrown from the Eiffel Tower falls to earth. My soft ice thrown, my mother-in-law thrown from the Eiffel Tower, it goes to the earth, right? And so on and so on and so on. There's something common to them. It's a sort of reasonable leap to take, right? But it's still an abstraction. But there's something going on here. Even if we say, well, they're probably sort of, let's say, made of the same thing. Let's call that matter, right? Because it matters. Let's call it matter. They're made of matter. That's why they're doing it. But it doesn't give me a quantifiable sort of set of rules to work by, right? What if I wanted to hit something particular by throwing whatever object, right? I might want to say, okay, how high do I need to get up? How hard do I need to throw it? How big does it need to be? And all these things, right? Because these are advantageous aspects to me in order to whatever my goal is, right? Because I have free will, right? So, and I would say science is an expression of free will, right? It's a tool to help you go about in your free will scenario, right? Okay, so what I'm doing when I'm going up in the Eiffel Tower, right? I'm creating distance between Earth and beaver, right? And because beaver and Earth are not close to each other, the gravity will be, the effect of gravity will start to become obvious to me, right? If I let go of the beaver. The beaver could be there on Earth and I wouldn't experience the whatever effect, right? And I can't even tell you there is an effect because I'm not experiencing any change, right? But the idea of gravity still being there, but it's just not doing anything apart from keeping them together is still, consistent with the idea of gravity, right? Or the theory of gravity, maybe you should say. Okay, so what we're doing now is trying to, when we are observing objects in a particular situation or scenario, we create a generalized, I want to create a generalized description of how to take what I previously experienced and the situation right now, and then predict what is going to happen in the future. If I can do that, that's a pretty fucking good thing, right? It's a useful, potentially at least, right? Unless you're Bernardo Kastrup, then you don't care about these things, right? Because it's all about saying that the beaver is a ripple that doesn't exist or something like that, right? So okay, good luck with that, right? I'm interested in the actual beaver. So I'm creating distance between beaver and earth, right? Because I am not letting go of beaver is not doing anything. But based on my prior experiences, if I let go of beaver, I expect particular things to happen, right? And that's because, well, I don't know what it's because, but I because of prior experiences and the situation now, I expect something to happen in the future, right? And it's framed, the generalization of this is based on the observations. Prior observations of Earth, prior observations of beavers, right? But because I have not only done it with beavers, I also done it with books and soft ice and tractors and so on, right? And the same thing seems to happen. It doesn't matter if I drop a beaver or a book or a soft ice from the Eiffel Tower, it does the same thing every time, no matter the object. So I'm saying they're made of the same thing because they behave the same way, right? In that particular regard. Okay, but now we're doing it with a beaver. But it might be something else that I consider of the same. I might bring something else along and say, okay, I have never tried it with a carrot, so let me try it with a carrot. But I have reason to believe that it's going to behave the same way, right? So it's up to you to decide whether or not an object of some kind will be acting according to gravity, right? That's up to the formula. If I can come up with a formula, doesn't tell you what is going to be affected by it. That's up to you to decide, right? That's up to your situation and your use of the formula, right? Nobody tells you to use the formula. Nobody tells you to expect anything. It's up to you, right? So this guy, Newton sitting in his garden, and so all of a sudden under the apple tree, rather he's as the legend goes, right? The apple falls on his head, and he sort of gets paralyzed, and some idea is inflicted in him because of the accident, right? And that is, there's something going on. There's matter, the apple, and there's earth, there's me, who got in the way of the apple, and so on and so on. And one thing takes the other, right? He's pondering about the planets. Maybe I'm sitting on a planet, so I'm close to a planet, right? So the apple is like a small moon or planet around Earth, right? So why not? Why wouldn't that be the same as the moon, for instance, right? The moon is just moving, so it's not falling. It's perpetually falling, right? Okay, let's not get into that. But the tree had created distance between the apple and Earth. And when the tree couldn't hold the apple anymore, the apple started moving towards Earth. And it does it the same way as Galileo would tell you, as all other things falling, right? So there's something about one object, another object, and distance, right? That's the abstraction. Do I need anything else? It doesn't look like it, right? There might be something like resistance, air resistance, so on, right? And that's one of the problems that, that in measuring these things, right? That you have to take care of, right? Because there are other objects in the way, like atmosphere, whatever, right? Birds and so if we say there's an object here and another object here, and they are made of the same thing, they are made of matter. So they both are responsible for something going on, right? But all that is going on is based on these two objects. There's nothing else I need to observe. If I have big object, small object, beaver, right? Or two beavers for that matter, right? Then there's something going on that only depends on these two objects. If there's more it depends on, I have to describe that goings on without having access to it, using a formula where I put together these things that I have access to, which is the beaver and earth, right? So I create a formula that only entails the objects I am observing that is participating in this particular scenario, this particular event, right? All the other times I've done it, it's the same outcome, right? So now I'm generalizing it into a formula. And the formula then only describes the objects involved in the situation, right? It only describes what is involved in that prediction. You're predicting some prior experiences. You look at what was involved. There was earth, there was beaver, right? And there was some distance. But distance is not something I am observing. That's something I am abstracting, I would say, right? I'm comparing how many beavers distances from earth, for instance, right? Or how many earth distances from beaver, something like that. But you could take some others, the standard meter in Paris, right? This metal stick that is defined as a meter, which is, what is it? A 40 million of the distance between the poles or whatever, right? Something like that. I don't remember exact. Doesn't matter. But it's still a reference to Earth, right? So if you take, okay, I have a meter, then I take, okay, I'm moving up the Eiffel Tower 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter, 4 meter. Then I'm quantifying distance, right? But I'm comparing it to the meter standard, right? I'm using then to measure a distance. Then there are three components that the way this beaver is going to fall, move, behave, right? Things are going to go on. The force, as I would call it, that which is going on, the gravitational force. I don't know what it is. I'm just calling it a force, right? That's what Newton did. He said, this is a force. And there's something working, going on. I'm going to call it a force. And it only depends on the mass of the matter in one object times the mass of the matter in the other object, divided by the distance. Because each of the participant in the force they exude on each other, so to say, right, is each of them are inversely proportional to the distance they are from each other. The further they are apart, the idea is the less they influence each other, right? So the further they are apart, so each of the force they participate with is inversely proportional to the distance they are from each other. That's the idea, right? The further I bring it up to in the infinity of the Eiffel Tower, right? The less whatever is going on, influenced by one object, is influencing the other object, right? So if the force of them are, the closer they are, or the bigger they are, the more force there is, right? And the further they are apart, the less force there is. And then I bang them together by multiplying them, or the product of them, right? So it's mass 1 divided by distance 1, or distance, and my mass 2 divided by distance, banged together. So you get mass 1 times mass 2 divided by distance, and it's the same distance because that doesn't, from one to the other, from the other to the one, it's the same. So it's distance times distance, right? So distance squared. And then in order to make the various quantifications of each of them come together, there's a constant there, right? The g. That's not gravity. That's just a constant in order to make things work mathematically, right? Force, the F, is the gravitational force, right? So when you then look at them, you say, okay, so is Earth going to move towards the beaver, or is the beaver going to move towards the Earth, right? That intuitively has always been, in my experience, the beaver will move towards the Earth. What's the difference? Well, the beaver has a very low mass, while the Earth potentially has a very high mass, or very large mass, right? So the opposite forces are very different. The beaver is very small, the Earth is very large. Therefore, the beaver will move towards the Earth, right? So the observations of beaver and Earth in relation to each other is generalized into: you have Earth, you have object. Each of them have a mass, and there's a distance between them. If there is a distance, if there's no distance, there is no force, right? There is no gravitational force because they are eliminated by there being no distance between each other, right? Obviously. You could say that it's the core of, or the center of Earth, which is the distance, and that would be correct, I would say, right? But because there are other forces in play, I'm not flying into the core of Earth. I am, standing here because of some other forces, right? But let's say that we are, maybe it's getting a little too convoluted, this. I'm sorry about that. But the generalization is that you have one mass, you have another mass. If there's a distance, the force between them will be like this. The force is abstract. But the abstraction is purely dependent on observations, which is mass 1 and mass 2. You have to go and observe in order to use this, right? You have to go and observe a mass 1 and a mass 2 at least, right? And you also have to deduce whether or not there is a distance between them. And you have to calculate that distance using some third object, maybe a reference object, if you want to communicate with somebody else, right? That's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. It is a generalized presentation of prior experiences. And the formula says, because of all these prior experiences, this formula still holds. It seems, right? There's no situation in the present I have been able to find where it doesn't hold, right? So it's a functional, maybe we will accept for, Einstein, right? That's another story, and that's an important part of it, right? As far as it goes, this works with everyday observations, right? Beavers always fall the same way according to this calculation of force and distances and speeds and whatever, right? That you can sort of come up with formulas that expresses this. The formula is a generalized description of what has been going on until now, right? And your best bet to predicting the future is going with this, because it's based on prior experiences, right? It's not based on somebody's conjured up thinking. It is somebody getting hit on the head with an apple, or if it was a beaver falling, they'll say, what the fuck? That beaver keeps falling the same way. Maybe there's a pattern here, right? That is all it is. Science doesn't tell you what the beaver is, right? Science doesn't, or the scientific approach doesn't tell you what Earth is for one simple reason, or maybe two simple reasons. You cannot get to it. You cannot get to what it is. It's basically a nonsensical question to say, what is a beaver? What is Earth? You can't get to it. And I don't give a fuck how many abstractions you come up with fields and ripples and whatever bullshit stories you can conjure up in your little mind. It's never going to be an explanation, even if you believe it's an explanation, right? And the other part of it, you don't fucking need it. Right? It's based on your psychology and your anxiety and whatever bullshit, right? That you think you need an explanation of what it is in order to use it. I don't think your stomach cares about what a banana is. Right? As long as you shove some bananas down there or something else that the stomach uses, right? Your stomach doesn't care about bananas. It's only your pathetic little mind that wants explanations. And because you want explanation but can't get it, you're going to conjure up some bullshit that cushions your pathetic little anxiety about the meaning of life and shit, right? It doesn't matter. There is no meaning, goddammit, right? There is no meaning that you can think your way to or observe your way to, right? You can only conjure up a meaning in your own mind and say, I'm going with this, right? And I guess you could say that analytic idealism is exactly that. Maybe I will give you that, right? But the problem is that they are not saying, oh yeah, this is just my meaning. This is just, no. They are collectivizing it always. It's, you don't have your own will. It's not about you little peasant, right? It's about the big mind out there, right? It's about destroying your sense of individualism, right? It's your experience telling you that you are not important, right? You're listening to your experience to tell you you shouldn't listen to your experience, right? I don't like that, right? Just be careful that when you draw a conclusion, it's always you that is drawing that conclusion, right? That's all I beg of you to consider. When you draw a conclusion, it is your conclusion, based on your philosophy. It's not a part of your experience telling you how to understand your experience. And that goes for me also. Don't take what I say for granted. Maybe you could be inspired in order to think for yourself, but God damn it, always think for yourself. Always, right? Don't take anything for granted. Nothing is given. Nothing, right? You have to think it up yourself. You have to think it up yourself. I'm presenting how I think, right? It could be correct. Maybe in a few months I figure out there's some problem here. I need to fix it. But so far, so good, right? I'm in the business of telling people to fucking think for themselves, right? I'm sort of an enlightenment extremist, right? I don't want to engage with people who has been told not to think for themselves, but to accept what somebody else tells them, right? It's scary to me, right? I want to interact with people who are very, very confident in their own philosophy, right? And those are the people I want to talk to, right? I don't want to talk to little peasants or little destroyed people who have been destroyed since childhood and just have been told what to think. They're dangerous. Because they're going to eat whatever they're being told, right? Because they have their will to think for themselves has been destroyed and it gives them anxiety. I want people who can think for themselves, right? I don't want little slaves, mental slaves. I don't want to interact with those, right? And the problem is how could I, somebody who has have their mind destroyed so they can't think for themselves, how can I possibly convince them to think for themselves? That's what they're being told they shouldn't do, right? It's okay. But all of those of you, my 287, and thank you for the new list sub arriving. I hope you enjoy. Please stay and please share, like, and subscribe, and give me a like, please. If I have 286 subs, more of you could possibly give me a like if you watch my videos. Maybe they're all dead. I don't know. I'm collecting dead people who can't subscribe or who can't destroy their subscription, right? I don't know what's going on, right? But let's get into the deconstruction of consciousness squared. Don't be square. Also a really weird kind of squared. So consciousness times consciousness or what? I don't know. And I don't care. Let's get into the video here.
Any rational worldview needs to be able to account for known, unquestionable facts of reality. In this video series so far, we have pointed out a number of problems for philosophical materialism, with the intention of showing an alternative that can account for all of these issues. But before we do so, we have to point out additional black swan events for which materialism has no explanation. For instance, how can a materialist explain acquired savant syndrome, which is the acquisition of profound abilities because of damage to the brain? If the brain produces mental states, then severe damage to the brain could only decrease mental abilities. From an article...
Why? That's a claim. It's stupid, right? It's against this, okay, science and materialism has a problem over there. Therefore, it doesn't work, right? If you're describing your car, there's wheels on my car. There's a windscreen. There's a motor. There's a helmet there. There's seats. And then there's, it has legs. And then, idealists come in and say, what? Legs? No, a car doesn't have legs. So cars don't exist. Because you made an error. Therefore, it's all, we can't trust it. Right? That's the approach. They are just waiting for you to make some either there's something you can't explain, or there's something you explained incorrectly according to their standards, right? And then they're going to say, then we have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? And then you have to say that there's only other solution is idealism, right? That's the trick. That's the sophist trick, right?
Scientific American, obviously written by a materialist, entitled Brain Gain. A person can instantly blossom into a savant, and no one knows why. In acquired savant syndrome, astonishing new abilities, typically in music, art, or mathematics, appear unexpectedly in ordinary persons after a head injury, stroke, or other central nervous system incident.
Maybe how the mind works is it has developed to destroy itself in order to fit in with a so-called culture or a if you are too selfish and too smart, you might not fit in. you would be kicked out. All those who were smart and could think for themselves, they were killed because they didn't fit into the group. So all those who had brains that destroyed themselves into submission, they were the one who got to, procreate, right? So in the way the mind or the brain or whatever, how things work, I don't know, but I'm just guessing here, right? Is that those who had brain fog would be the one who would survive evolutionarily, right? So then if they by chance or by luck or incident had their head hit so that fog lifted out of their mind, all of a sudden all their potentialities are available to them. They start making symphonies or whatever they do, right? I'm not saying necessarily that it's smart to make a symphony, but it's the idea of it, right? And then they say, aha, so you can't explain everything. No, maybe it's just because the mind fog that culture has inflicted on human evolution is inhibiting all the abilities there is in the mind, right? And when they hit on the head, all of a sudden, all this shit is lifted and nobody can explain what the fuck is going on because usually people are stupid, right?
Where no such abilities or interests were present pre-incident. It continues. The new skill is automatically coupled with a detailed epiphany-type knowledge of the underlying rules of music, art, or math, for example, none of which the person has studied. They know things without ever having...
Oh, they don't have the papers! No, they don't have government papers that allows them to say, yes, I am an expert on symphonies. I'm an expert on philosophy, right?
Learn them. Now, in the materialist view of the world, this should not be possible. Yet this syndrome is a known fact of the world. To the materialist, it is a black swan. And while there is an explanation, it cannot be found within materialism. Another known fact of the world are those persons with dissociative identity disorder, which was once known as multiple personality disorder. While such cases are interesting in themselves in this discussion, there is a profound case in Germany of a woman who had some alters who were blind, enterprising.
Yeah, and that's why you can trust this, right? It's also, oh yeah, there was one incident I heard of, somebody told me there's a woman somewhere, something like that. That can never be a part of anybody's philosophy, right? If you accept this, you're saying, oh, I'm trying to get a grasp on my experiences, right? I'm doing some ontology and potentially some metaphysics here. I have to do it from the inside because I can't just let that which I am trying to get a grasp on, which is my experiences in general, tell me how to understand the experiences, right? I can make that begging the question thing, where I'm setting, okay, I'm not worthy. I have to listen to the experiences I'm trying to clarify in order to tell me how to understand my experiences, right? That's a circular begging the question kind of argument, right? So you have to work from the inside when you're doing philosophy. That's why I'm constantly pounding on, you have to do it yourself, right? But what Bernardo Kastrup wants me to do is, no, don't think for yourself. Listen to me. You listen to your experience. Now that my experience, listen to me. I'm a part of your experience. And I have an experience of somebody else having an experience of a woman, an experience that is a woman who told me I have this experience. That is going to be the foundation of your philosophy, right? So I don't have to think for myself. I have to listen in a begging the question scenario to my experience about somebody having an experience of somebody else having an experience of a woman telling you she has an experience. Fuck off, man, right?
Doctors thought to attach her to brain scanners to see visual activity in the brain, while blind alters were in control. The article reads, using a tool to measure BT's brain electrical activity in response to visual stimuli, doctors observed that the visual areas of BT's brain remained inactive.
They observed, but that's an observation that is colors and sound and so on in their mind, right? Now they are describing their mind. They are describing their experience. They are not describing the brain. Yeah, the brain is a part of their experience, but that's not what's going on, and even the idealist will tell you that. But now, because they have been classified as scientists or whatever, they are saying it's the outside, right? They are wrapped up in switching between I have my experiences and I think my experiences correlate to something outside my mind, without clarifying how they do this, right? It is in general, this is the standing in the bucket and lifting yourself up scenario, right? You can't do this. This is impossible. There is no doing this. Finding these very particular special situations where, oh yeah, then I can go behind the curtain and look here. Oh, I can. No, there is no going behind. You always bring. It's like the video camera turning around its lens to photograph the LCD screen on the backside of the camera, and thinking that it can have the direct experience of that LCD. It doesn't matter how you do that with the lens. It will always be the lens version of that LCD screen, right? And you are that lens. You are living the lens version of it, no matter what you do, no matter what abstraction you come up with to represent that LCD screen on the camera, right? You are living in the lens version of this. And no matter how smart you think you are and how much you can juggle around abstractions about whatever shit, quantum shit and whatever, right? You can never get to the direct experience of that LCD screen. So it doesn't matter about these abstractions, because they're never going to be the thing itself. Just like I told you about the beaver and Earth, right? I have experience of beaver and I have experience of Earth, and there's something they're moving around in a particular pattern that seems to be repetitive. But what is going on, I can never get to, because it exactly is not a part of my experience. That's why I'm creating these abstractions and formulas, which is basically saying I'm going to abstract something and then bring things together that I can actually experience, that expresses this thing going on called gravity, for instance, right? But gravity is my mental abstraction representation of that which I don't have access to. So it's all futile, all this metaphysics. It's completely futile. You will never get to that answer you're craving. Right? And as I said so many times before, it doesn't really matter, because when you go down to the grocery stores, it's still the same bananas, right? It's still the same beaver. It's still the same Eiffel Tower. It's still the same Earth. It's still the same, right? It doesn't matter whether or not Bernardo Kastrup could conjure up some ripples or some fields or some particles or whatever he can come up with. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in any way. You still have to go and interact with that reality as you used to do before you heard about Bernardo Kastrup, right? If anything, all he has done, and this guy too, is confuse you enough so you might go back and listen to them, and maybe, just maybe, they have found the back door to the big mind or whatever, right? Fuck off.
During her blind personality traits and active in her sighted personalities. But if the brain is the cause of mental activity and sight, how can these areas of the brain be shut off as an effect of mental activity? This is backwards according to materialism and requires an explanation, along with the entire concept of multiple personalities and individuals from a single brain. Next, the placebo effect demonstrates that a belief that a treatment will have a positive benefit is sufficient enough to have a positive physical impact, even when the treatment is an inert sugar pill. The understanding of this effect is so accepted that randomized controlled trials with placebo are the gold standard for determining efficacy of novel pharmaceutical treatments. If placebos did not produce such an effect, then the control groups in drug trials would simply consist of persons who do not take any drug instead of those who believe that they have. The challenge for the materialist is that the positive impact of the belief in placebos refutes one of their core assumptions, namely that all of our mental states, including beliefs, are effects and cannot be causes in and of themselves. This would mean that the belief in a placebo could not possibly have any impact on their health. Yet placebos have such a powerful impact that drug trials are designed around them. So let's return to our list of outstanding problems of materialism.
Damn that music, man. Oh, this is fucking annoying, right?
All of which require answers. So let's add some more problems. The contradiction of acquired savant syndrome. The lack of visual brain activity in a blind alter of an otherwise sighted person.
These are basically all some kind of straw man, right? All conjured up problems that aren't there, but they just find problems, right? They conjure up problems. They say, oh, I can list a lot of problems here, right? So you better come over to... And, you know, idealism is basically a non-answer. It's pure imagination. Yeah, if you want to live in imagination, okay, be my guest. But you're not explaining anything. You are basically saying there are problems in materialism. Now I'm going to give you a non-answer, a non-explanation that you can live in called mind. And if I say everything is mind, I've solved all the problems. No, you've just said, you're basically called, I can't answer the question, the answer to the questions. And it's this sense of losing contact with anything and everything you hold dear about living a life that is what they take advantage of. You understand there are problems in, and the hard problem is the unsolvable problem, in my opinion. That is why it's called the hard problem. It is actually an impossible problem in the sense that it can't be answered, right? No matter what metaphysics you have, right? It's all this is manipulative. It is all to find, oh yeah, there's a problem there. Okay, materialism bad. Oh, there's another problem there. Materialism bad. Right? Materialism bad. Materialism bad. Materialism bad. Materialism bad. Okay, and all the plebs will. Oh, okay, I guess there's some problem there. Yeah, and I don't like materialism. It's all about just buying stuff. It's all, there's no love. I want mommy. Right? Also appealing to that. Oh, come over to us. We are enlightened, semi-religious beings who are about love, right? We will hold hands, and unless you criticize our philosophy, of course, then we will push the government on you, right? But we're all about love, right?
The contradiction of placebos. And let's not forget to list the largest issue of all.
Why is it a contradiction? I don't understand this, right? All these, you're trying to explain the world using science, the scientific method that I described to you before, right? Using the beaver and the earth. No, nobody says this will work in all cases, right? It can be used everywhere. Maybe that's the biggest flaw of scientific approach, is that you all of a sudden think that everything can be explained using science. No, that's not given to you. But it's the best bet there is, right? Maybe there are things that can't be described or predicted and so on, right? I don't know. But the arrogance of scientism is that everything should be describable through science, scientific methods. That's not necessarily given, right? And then of course the idea of science and the authority of science is based on the fucked up notion of the naive realism and what that would entail for knowledge and authority, right? That is the biggest problem with materialism and science in general, I would say, is the idea of the authority that it entails. As I just said, that's counter to the idea of science, in my opinion. Science is a generalized form where you are the one who are bringing the objects and the observation to it. Nobody says you have to follow any formula, right? There's nobody. If there is somebody saying that, then fuck them. I don't care about science. I came up with a formula. I've done the science. Now obey the science. Fuck them, right? It's an offer. Somebody has done some observations and, condensed it into a formula, and they say, well, I have made these observations. I know that you haven't made the observations. I have made the observations. Then when there are beavers and there's earth, this seems to be a functional. I can't find any flaws in this formula or this, this theory. But nobody says that you have to use it, right? Nobody says that. If they do, fuck them. It's an offer, and the offer is if the formula says you have to have mass 1 and mass 2 and you have to calculate a distance, then you have to do that by observation, right? Nobody can tell you what to do. That's what they want to get rid of. They want you to say, they want to take that leap away from you actually doing the science. They want you, and that's the problem with Bernardo Kastrup also. Somebody did the science. And because they have the government papers, you have to obey the science. Then everybody knows it now. It's been known, dissociative disorders have been known by everybody. If you contradict it, if you refute it, that's a problem with you. You're stupid. Because government papers, right? No. Science says you have to do the observation. If science says anything, science doesn't say anything. But those who are working in a scientific approach should say, yes, this is just a theory. You have to do the science, right? Science is not, somebody did the experiment, now you have to obey science. If they do that, they are fucked up, corrupt people. Just like that, Fauci guy saying, you have to take this injection because of science. Obey science, you little peasant, right? That is not scientific. Science is saying, I have this formula. I made some observations. I created a formula. I can't find any flaws in it, right? That is a claim, of course, if you have done the observations, right? Then you can decide whether or not you want to use that formula. Because you didn't do the observations, right? So if you don't want to use the formula because you're saying, well, I didn't do those observations, fine. Nobody should force you to use anything. But then that it's the forcing that is the problem, right? It's the authoritarian approach to science, which is a very big problem, in my opinion. It is counter-science, actually. Because science is observation. Nobody can make your observations for you, right? It's like, yeah, you just eat this thing. I have checked it scientifically, then eat this banana, right? But that's what they're doing with the injections. They're saying, yeah, somebody has checked it. You just obey the science. Get this fucking injection, right? Fuck you, man. Take your fucking injection and shove it up your asshole, right? Because it's unscientific. You are claiming science by forcing me to be, and at the same time forcing me to be unscientific about it because you think you have found the answers, right? And I don't see idealists like Bernardo Kastrup criticizing this, though he is an extreme empiricist. Oh, he's an extremely scientific. But if Dr. Fauci says you have to take an experimental sauce up your asshole, then of course you're going to do that because science, right?
Problem of consciousness.
Give me a video where Bernardo Kastrup says, of course you shouldn't just do what somebody else says. Even if they claim science, you shouldn't do that. Give that to me, right? Please find that video or presentation where it says, of course you shouldn't just accept what somebody else says, claiming whatever, right? Even if they claim science. Doesn't matter. You will have to do the observations. Give me the video where he says that. Otherwise, I don't buy any of his fucking bullshit, right? I don't care how many fields he's living in or ripples or whatever, mind at large, who's going to suck him dry, being a spy for the god or whatever, right? All that bullshit, shove it up his asshole, man, right? If he's not going against idiots like Dr. Fauci, who says you just have to trust science and take this fucking experimental mRNA juice, right? Then I'm not buying anything, because he's fucking corrupt, right?
Why does it even exist? Materialism is unable to account for all of these problems, and in our next video, we will explain an alternative view that can. Until then, please nudge the YouTube algorithm with a like and subscribe to Consciousness Squared.
That's it. I was thinking about something. I lost, my focus. Sorry for that. But yes, there was something I was thinking I was going to talk about. There was. I think it was. I'm not sure what I was actually thinking back then. But let me take it from here, right? There was a new video from Essentia Foundation on free will yesterday. And it's this one here. There's a thumbnail here, you can see. Find more meaning without free will, right? And this thumbnail says, you have no free will, and that is great, right? Does that remind you of anything, right? Does that remind you of anything? Well, what comes to my mind is at least, you will own nothing, and you will be happy, right? It's not far off, is it? You have no free will and that you will like it, right? You'll love it. You will own nothing and you'll be happy. You have no free will and that will make you happy, right? Are they sort of, is the Illuminati, is the Freemasons and the 33 degrees of whatever bullshit, who is sort of an NGO of Illuminati, who's working on the same project as Agenda 2030 and the World Economic Forum, and you will own nothing and be happy, and you're just force-fed the box because of science. Pay attention, right? Fuck off, man. Please, like and subscribe. Consider donation, links below. And there's also a Discord board you can join, also links below. Let me have your comment. What do you think of this? I find it disgusting, to be honest, right? And at this point, I find Bernardo Kastrup kind of. I had a word in my mind earlier today, and I forget what term to put on it, right? He gives me the creeps. There's this where he's sitting with this other guy, Hansi, or whatever his name is, discussing this idealism. I get some creepy notions listening to him. There's something about him that is off. He gives me the creeps, right? And I've always been quite sensitive about these. This is sort of first impression, or maybe this is the 33rd impression, right? There's something about him that is off, right? And all this keeps coming back to his website, where he has this coat of arms, right? This sort of mystic coat of arms with symbols of beavers and whatever. I'm not even sure if it's a beaver, but some symbolism and a unicorn or whatever, right? Who the hell in the modern world wants shit like that? Unless you are in some kind of Freemasonry bullshit. And, maybe, just maybe, this Fred Matzers, he has these foundations, right? Including the Essentia Foundation, where he's sort of hiring people like poor little pathetic Bernardo Kastrup, who has daddy issues and is suicidal and whatever, right? And to work for them. But foundations are just tax shelters for the elite, right? Where they can go and get benefits, but at the same time virtue signal about how much they want to save the world from all its self-inflicted problems. We have seen the light. We are going to save you. No. It's all about tax sheltering, right? It's rich people creating foundations. They're the Bill and Melinda Foundation, right? Or the, what are they called? Clinton Foundation. They always create these foundations where they can hide their money, right? And do all sorts of shit. I don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? Who the hell knows what they're doing, these elites? They want to make sure that they control the poor people. This is crowd controlling the blind, right? It's the one-eyed kings who have a bit of money, or maybe a lot of money, sheltering them in their foundations so they can crowd control the poor people into staying poor. So they have somebody to work for them so they can go to the golf course instead, right? Fuck off. Okay. Have a nice day. See you in the next one.